either live by the gun or you die by the sword.
Welcome to The Good, the Bad, and the Weird. I'm Nico.
And I'm Chris.
So it begins.
Again.
Again. The second half of the Two Towers.
Yes.
Yeah. So where we left off last time.
Yes.
Everyone had just fled. Frodo and Sam had been picked up.
Mm-hmm.
Potatoes were lost.
Potatoes. Poor potatoes.
Yeah. And we begin with Gimli explaining dwarves to Éomer.
Yes.
As Rohan continues to be evacuated to Helm's Deep. One, and like I had mentioned previously, of note, I know in the trailer for the new Lord of the Rings show, they show beardless women, dwarfs.
Mm-hmm.
Originally, Tolkien did describe them all as having beards, but later, as he does in a lot of things, he kind of rewrote some stuff, and dwarf women have beards and don't have beards.
Yes.
So,
yes.
Answered.
I heavily appreciate the leaning towards the bearded woman.
Yeah.
I think it's much better.
Yeah, I think it's funny, just it adds a little differentiation for the dwarves.
Yes.
But at the same time, like, I mean, it is what it is.
It is what it is.
So, yeah, no comment on what the show's going to be like.
Yeah, we'll find out.
Yeah, I know a lot of people are kind of worried.
Yeah, as everyone is with something new.
Yeah, and something beloved.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And we get a little bit more of the one-sided romance over some bad stew.
It is one of my favorite, like, light comedy scenes in the movie.
Yeah. And this is where we learned that Aragorn is old as shit.
Yeah, Jesus, dude.
Yeah.
Have your life together already.
Yeah, and, I mean, Aragorn's 87, but
yes.
I do kind of understand why it was removed from the theatrical version.
It's not needed.
It's not needed, but, I mean...
It's still a nice touch.
You also have to kind of know who the Númenóreans are, and it's not really...
You would have had to know the cutout scenes from the first movie to appreciate the cutout scene from the second movie.
And even then, like, the Númenóreans aren't really described at all.
No, not really.
Yeah. And, before we really get into it, Chris, what are we drinking in the second episode?
We have delightful beer.
Yeah. Because that's about all they drink, I think, in this one. Actually, I don't think they drink at all.
Not really. I mean, we weren't going to make ourselves terrible stew, so...
Oh. I mean, we could have just made meat tea. Cheers.
Cheers. Delicious.
Yeah. I don't know. When I was rewatching it yesterday, there's a part, and I now that I think about it, I think, because Gimli says, no, I couldn't.
Mm-hmm.
I think Gimli was warned about the stew beforehand.
Yes, I think... Okay, she wanders around camp with a whole pot of it and a spoon.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, nobody seems to be lining up for this woman's cooking.
No.
So I think it is a well-established fact that she can't cook worth shit.
Well, because she's a warrior.
Yes. Also, she's just real bad at it.
Yeah. Well, and I guess another important question.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make her... Well, what's the male equivalent of a cougar? Because Aragorn is definitely a grandfather age.
Oh, yeah, no, he's, like, easily her grandfather.
Yeah. I was going to say cougar complex, but I don't know what the male equivalent is.
I think they call that sugar daddy.
Call him an old goat.
I do like the added quirks to her character.
Mm-hmm.
Just, yeah, they're not necessary. No, they're not accurate to, like, book version of her, but, like, you need something to humanize her.
Yeah.
Otherwise, she's just a little bit too one note, I guess.
Well, and that's how all the characters are in this, really.
Yeah.
I mean, no knocking on Tolkien's writing, but it is dry. And we've mentioned that before.
You have to imagine a lot yourself.
Yeah, and add a little comedy here and there.
Yes.
Because the rest of this movie is, for the most part, pretty serious.
Yeah, no, it truly is.
Because right after that, while they're resting, Aragorn has, like, a dream/communication with Arwen.
I don't know. She looks really great.
Oh, yes, she does. This is the very sheer looking dress.
This is the dress.
Yeah. But it also shows that their relationship's not perfect. And it kind of builds up this level of, like, almost suicide mission that Aragorn has, and, like, this lack of giving a shit. Because, like, he really throws himself full at everything. Like, if he dies, he dies.
Yeah, no, nothing holding him back sort of nonsense.
Yeah.
Despite a lot of things potentially should be holding him back.
Yeah, considering he's the last of the Númenóreans.
And also, like, you know, got a really sweet girlfriend back home.
Yeah, I mean, well, I mean, he is 87, but he's doing well for an 87-year-old.
I was gonna say, I mean, it doesn't seem to be slowing down anybody in this world.
He's got an elf chick on one arm, and if he wanted, he could have a Rohan chick, a horse girl.
Yeah.
But also, we talked about it a little bit, and my cousin Riley brought this up to me when I listened to our recent episode, or our last episode, when we were asking about elf beds.
Yes.
She is in one, but it's more of like a day bed kind of thing. It's not really like
for
a
lounging.
bed. Yeah, well, she's sitting there, just laying around lamenting that Aragorn's kind of like, well, I love you, but we can't be together.
Yeah, it's, when you break down their two relationship, like, fully, it is mostly just emo kid pining. Yeah. Which is hilarious to me.
Yeah, and I mean, it's also kind of a way to, like, try and bring them together. Like,
oh, yeah.
Her lament is, like...
They mirror each other.
Yeah. You know what they are?
What?
They're two elven star-crossed lovers. Or whatever her stupid star is called.
Yes, evening.
Evening star-crossed lovers.
Yeah, because she's over here being like, well, I'm an elf. We can't be together. And he's over here like, I'm a weird... sad man, we can't be together. And she's like, but we could. And he's like, we could, but we shouldn't.
Because of your dad. Which...
Yeah, it's... I mean...
So...
Hasn't stopped Aragorn before.
No. Well, I mean, he got sent to be a ranger up north to not have them together. But, like, going back into it, knowing more about the Lord of the Rings and everything around it, I actually really like Elrond really being a dick here.
Yes, I do too.
Because the way he's framing the long life is like a curse, which it kind of is at that point.
For him, it definitely is.
Well, and also because, remember, his brother shed away his gift of immortality to become a human. Yeah. And so the ancestor of his future distant nephew / adopted son / soon-to-be son-in-law.
Yeah. Yeah, him.
It's a very nice rectangle their family tree makes. Yeah, it's... Yeah, but we quickly move on from that. I mean, it sets up more of Aragorn's drive. And yeah, for the most part, I mean, the scenes are good, don't get me wrong. And this is really the part where rewatching where I realize how much little detail are put into stuff. Oh, yeah. Because there's that one tapestry that that's behind Elrond when he's talking to Arwen. And it's just like, you nerds. Yes. You put a reference to the time of the trees. Uh-huh. They
snuck it in.
Yeah, which, man, I wonder how much of their, like, that memorabilia got, like, passed around or sold.
I know several people kept quite a bit, but also I'm sure a lot of it got sold. There's just too much. Yeah. Like, no one can possibly hold on to all of it.
Which, I mean, that would be a cool thing to have of just, like, some random, like, candle holder of, like, yes, this is the candle, one of the candle holders
in
you
this
see
one scene.
Yeah, exactly.
Single scene.
But that actually would be pretty cool.
It would be. I would totally buy that.
So would I. But they are, the refugees are back on the road. Yep. Heading to Helm's Deep. And we get our warg attack.
Yes. A first proper battle.
Yeah. Well,
it's more battle-y than our last battle.
Actually, I don't think we've really had a battle, because the only thing we had was throwing, oh, no, we did. We lost
Boromir.
Well, no, we had the Rohirrim slaughtering the orcs, and the orcs interfighting.
Yeah, it was mostly a slaughter.
Yeah, we had a little bit of action. Yeah. But yeah, this is really our first action since the beginning of the movie and setting everything up. because there are some things I really like about this. This scene was the coolest when I was a kid.
Yes. Oh, it was so good.
I absolutely loved it. And looking back at it now, I do like how the king is very protective of Éowyn.
Yes.
Because she's like, oh, I can stay and fight. He's like, no. Because he's facing his own mortality.
Yes.
And he's like, hey, he's not articulating what he means.
No.
But he knows that if he dies and she dies, there's
they're
no
leaderless.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And their whole line's gone too. But he also puts it in a way that you can lead in different ways.
Yes.
Without like being too get the fuck out of here.
Yeah.
Well,
he's not very gentle about it.
No.
He could have worded it better.
He's not. I mean, they're also in the middle of a weird dog hybrid attack.
Yes. I love the hyena pugs.
Yeah, well, okay, so the thing about them, I do like that everyone in them feels damaged.
Yes.
They specifically said in the commentary that none of the orcs or urukai have like they're not clean looking. They're all they've all got scars. The wargs have scars.
Everyone has been through the ringer.
These aren't very tameable. They're tameable, but they're not good creatures.
They're rideable.
But specifically, the warg is a type of wolf.
Mm-hmm.
In the book it's called a wolf, but Peter Jackson went with a hyena-like build.
Mm-hmm.
But just because he didn't want them to feel like giant wolves, which
they would have.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, this is much scarier.
And they did a lot of work with making them believable, specifically like their saddles.
Yes.
Because shoulders, specifically the reason the saddles are on the shoulders is because the spines of predators are much more flexible and not as rigid as herbivores.
Yes.
That's why we ride on horses.
And not cats, who are accordions.
Yes, exactly. Or ferrets.
That would be the worst.
Yeah. But also, they wanted to try and have their faces more mimic the cave troll.
Mm-hmm.
And the felled beast as well, to kind of give a showing of like, all these animals have been corrupted by Sauron in some way or another.
Have the touch.
Yeah. Also, fun fact, the word warg comes from the Norse mythology Vargur, which specifically is also in reference to Fenrir, Skoll, and Hati.
Yes.
So, Tolkien did pull from a lot of sources.
Oh, yeah.
But he did it in a way that made it feel original. It didn't feel like some Dungeons and Dragons knockoff.
No, it didn't feel like, oh, you're pulling Loki from theology.
Exactly.
Like it's a small enough part that he was able to transform it.
Yeah. No, and if I remember right, in the books, like, this part is a real little, like, bit.
Oh, yeah.
Like, it's quick, it's over, done.
Yep.
And even then, wargs are mentioned.
Yes.
They're not. I don't think there's even really a warg fight, because this was even done at the last minute as well. Of like, Jacob's like, I want a warg fight, and everyone's like, what? What?
But also, what better way to like fight the horse people than with your like opponent's version of horse people?
Yeah, which honestly we don't see a lot of like cavalry on cavalry battles in movies.
No, because it's not as thrilling as I think a battle normally is portrayed.
Yeah. But
this isn't the battle. This is just like an ambush battle.
Yeah, it's a little skirmish.
Yes. And
with this scene, I mean, it's setting up Aragorn plummets, he's pulled off. But they did it in a way where actually it kind of happens in the same place as roughly a little bit before like Gandalf's fall in the first movie.
Yeah.
And I like that it starts to add a darkest hour to Rohan and forces Éowyn to really reveal her true feelings of like, oh shit, she is actually really sad.
Yeah.
But I like that it's short-lived.
It is. I also like the detail put into the death. Mm-hmm. Because, especially for like Gandalf's death.
Yeah.
Gandalf goes over the edge and then like that's kind of it for us. We see him fall. I like the double-sidedness of like, yes, Aragorn goes over the edge. We don't really know what happens, But we do get a good close-up of, like, his hand is stuck.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there is that, like, nice level of uncertainty.
Yeah.
Even though, like, there's a movie coming out called Return of the King, and boy, there's only one of those fuckers.
Yeah, which Tolkien hated that naming of that book, but because it ruined the end.
It totally ruins it. But at the same time, like, that level of uncertainty is still, it's a nice balance, where, like, it does feel real for the characters.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, they really did a good job with keeping up the drama.
And also, we get our first play into battle humor, which some people didn't care for.
Yeah.
I thrive on it. I love the battle humor from Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, and really the only battle humor we get is between Legolas and Gimli.
Yes.
Which adds
mostly it's aimed at Gimli.
Yeah, because Gimli's just too proud and Legolas is...
And stuck under 3 orcs.
Yeah.
And a warg.
Well, and that's the thing, too, because it really adds, like, to their camaraderie.
Yes.
Where they're not just,
It fills out their character so much more than... Arguably, this is the fault that, like, the dwarves in the books and the previous versions had, too, where, like, without that level of mild humor and camaraderie with someone else... Gimli wouldn't be much of a character.
No, he'd just be a representative for the dwarves. And same with Legolas. Legolas would have just been that elf.
Yeah.
And I think maybe that's some of the downfall of a lot of these fantasy movies is that they just make it, it's an elf for having high fantasy elements.
Yes.
And
so, yeah, I can see why people weren't a fan of the, like, combat humor. But for me, it really solidified these two's friendship.
Yeah, and same with me. There is a part coming up in the Helm's Deep battle that I absolutely dislike Jackson for on it. But we'll get to that. Just because, I mean, it happens over and over again.
Yes.
Just a bit. But speaking of the elf, the reason Legolas does the cool elf jump onto the horse is because...
It's so dope.
Yeah, it's hella cool.
It's hella cool.
It establishes, like, his cool hardcore parkour kind of shit.
Yes, which kind of becomes his style for the rest of the movies.
Yeah. Well, the reason he's there is because they forgot to film him
getting onto a horse,
and he was not available for pickup shots. He was already under contract elsewhere.
And then he also, while they were filming, couldn't get on and off a horse because he'd cracked 3 of his ribs.
Yeah, because Gimli's body double fell on him.
Yes, and then Gimli, the actor who played Gimli, managed to hurt himself somehow. I think he nicked himself, and so they were given a nickname for walking around and constantly hurting themselves, the 3 of them.
Yeah, I can't remember. Oh, no, I think he tipped over no, that was Bloom, Orlando Bloom. No, I know what you're thinking of. John Rhys Davies, he's missing part of his finger.
Yes.
And so they had to put a prosthetic finger tip on it, and they played a prank on Jackson of like, oh shit, I cut myself. That's what you're thinking of. Yeah, yes. That's what that was. But if you look closely, they do a really good job of him hopping on the horse and then someone going in front of him to hide getting rid of him. Yeah, they did it
was very nicely
good
done.
Job. Oh, and here's the bit. That's right, I wrote those notes for later, because here's where we have the Rally of the Orcs. That was specifically pulled from the Nuremberg rallies.
Yes.
Just and yeah, I mean, we already went into that in the last episode.
Exactly.
But yeah, it's still something that's it's still such an interesting topic. Because, like, I mean, we've had so many evil leaders.
Oh, yeah.
But this is, like, the de facto go-to if you want to portray evil.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting. And I think if I remember right, Christopher Lee, because they didn't want him just giving the speech to no one, just a bunch of the crew standing in a parking lot.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, it helped.
Yeah, it
was
really
very convincing.
Did. Yeah, I mean, it sets the orcs in motion.
Yes.
Which is going to lead to the big end.
Yes.
Because now they're at Helm's Deep.
Yes. Which is a sad, sad place.
Yeah, Helm's Deep. Well, and I do have a bit on it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, for start off, fantastic transition, just depiction of the city and explaining, hey, there's one weakness to this entire building.
Yes.
And going into it a little bit, I mean, there's not really a lot of architectural elements to go into it too much.
It's mostly just a pretty straightforward fortress.
Yeah, I mean, architecturally it's boring.
Yes.
But it's traditional medieval fortress first, and not really a settlement. There are people who live there, but they're not like...
They're housekeep.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
But what I do think is interesting is the tower.
Yes.
If you look at it closely, it has inklings of Isengard.
Yes.
With, like, its buttresses, but it's not as ornate.
No, this definitely feels more like a remnant of that, but, like, a far off from the capital, like, oh, well, you know, put in one nice window for when the guy comes to visit, but the rest of it just kind of get it on there, make it good.
Yeah, I mean, it's very...
It's functional.
Exactly. And there is a little ornamentation, but it's not much. Like, the windows have, like, a little offset. But it also has ties to Minas Tirith, because I don't think it's really shown as well in the movie. We see a little bit of it, but Helm's Deep is a layered... It has a layered wall systems to a center.
Yes.
But,
Reminiscent.
yeah, very similar.
Similar thought design.
Yeah. Also, the bigature for the Hornburg, which, by the way, that's the main fortress of Helm's Deep. Helm's Deep is the whole area.
Yeah.
It was half the size of a rugby field, and it was only built to 1/4 scale, and it could be walked on.
Nice.
And this structure was also mainly built in the Third Age. So we're still, everything in Rohan is still kind of fresh and new.
Yeah.
But it's not so new because there's parts of the wall that have like crumbled away, revealed their foundations.
It's definitely not been maintained to the extent it could have.
Or maybe they really even haven't had like a reason to.
That's true. It's supposedly been, they've been able to hold themselves where they were.
Yeah. But the model was 7 meters tall by 20 meters squared. And it was the first model of that size.
Yeah.
And for us Americans, that's about 100 and some change feet smaller than a 2-car garage.
It's sizable.
Yeah.
It's sizable.
And it's about 2.5 washing machines tall, or 7 feet tall. And 215 square feet specifically.
Ah.
It was done at 35th scale, so that way they could fit toy soldiers on it.
And also use it for some really interesting force perspective.
Yeah, and planning. Because that's where I think that's kind of cool that they didn't just use this bigature or the miniature just to be like...
Yeah, some flyovers.
They used it to actually like do detailing work and planning. Well,
and part of the like genius of doing the detail work with an actual model as opposed to just on plan or even just computer is it let them better understand how the two forces were going to interact with each other.
Yeah.
Because there was a pretty big worry of like, okay, well, we have a lot of creatures and beings on set, on camera right now. At what point does it move from being two armies fighting to a bunch of ants?
Yeah.
Like, at what point does it stop being war?
What scale do you lose the detail on?
Yes.
Because the scale on the prologue was appropriate.
Yes.
Because it was a massive battle, and it was the last battle for all of Middle-earth.
And the way that the two armies fought each other was very traditional, like, thought-minded. Like, okay, we've got Army 1, Army 2 marching at each other. We got spears, we got arrows. This one feels much closer to, like, almost World War Z zombies.
It's more of a siege battle.
Yeah, and also we've established at this point that, like, the orcs that they could be facing don't necessarily move like the soldiers we're accustomed to. Like, there is a potential for it to become more like the goblins that we saw in the first movie.
Yeah, there's a bit of rabble to it.
Exactly. Whereas, so, like, it's a lot easier for you to lose... army in that.
Well, and on top of that, so the entire model was made of polystyrene, and this was one of the ones where they went into extra detail just because. Yeah. And Jackson's like, they had to re-detail it because Jackson's like, I want to do close-ups of this. And they're like, you bastard.
You freaking would.
But they loved him.
Yes. And in the end, it turned out amazing.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, Helm's Deep is like it's the perfect way to set up a last stand.
Yes.
Because there's no way out. The caves don't really go that far.
And they're not big enough to hold everyone.
No, exactly. And they know no one's getting out if they get in.
Yeah.
Which also, I love the horns that they use.
Yes.
They're just so... Or, yeah, the horns on Isengard are really cool.
Yes.
And just nice detailing everywhere.
It really adds to, like, the fantasy without it feeling like fake magic.
Yeah, exactly. And, speaking of magic, we are back to the Ents.
Ah, the good old Ents.
Which we are, we see them start to appear for the Entmoot.
Where they all just kind of stand around and wiggle.
Yeah, which so what I like about this is every one of them is different. They're based off different trees.
They are all unique.
But also the clearing they're in, it feels like a sundial.
Yes, it does.
But not like traditional, like they
feel like the standing stones.
Yeah, like kind of in Brave, kind of a little bit. Like
they're a little Brave-esque, it's a little Stonehenge-esque, where it's like, it feels like old magic.
Exactly, that's the right term. Which, I mean,
they kind of are old magic.
They're some of the oldest beings to exist in Middle-earth.
Yep.
Because they were created to shepherd the trees and try and protect them from the other creations, or the creation of the dwarfs and the men who had cut down their trees for their own good.
Yes.
And how would my creatures protect themselves?
Poor trees.
Yeah. I mean, we know they're alive. They might not be that sentient, but they're alive.
They do try to eat hobbits.
Yeah.
Stupid hobbits.
They are very stupid hobbits. And so, in between that time frame, this is where we get to Aragorn is all alive and well.
One of arguably the best return scenes ever.
Yeah. Well, because he's just kind of trudging along, and then he sees the orc army coming.
Yes.
And so he's like, hey, we gotta get shit going, guys.
And it's not the orc army that they thought was pursuing them.
Yeah.
This is a lot more orcs than they thought was possible.
Yeah, and there's... Because we also get that little bit of when he's being arrived with Awen.
Mm-hmm.
Arwen.
Yes.
Yeah, Arwen just saying that, hey, her fate's with men.
Yeah.
That's what she's planning. And so, like, Aragorn now has his reason to...
Yeah, she's made her decision. He has to make his.
Yeah, and it's his reason to keep going.
Mm-hmm.
Which is very grounding moment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh, this is the part where... Okay, this is the part where they have the tapestry in the background.
Yes.
I got ahead of myself a little bit. But she's tied to men now.
Yeah, she's made her decision.
Mm-hmm.
Fuck what her dad says.
Yeah, for the most part, because remember, she does start going to the lands.
She's not a very good rebellious daughter.
Yeah. She
only rebels very little bit.
Yeah, and we get a little bit of, like, Sauron's gaze in this bit, because we're getting a little bit of insight into Frodo's fate as well if everything falls, because if men fall, then the orcs have one mission now.
Yeah, and it'd be an easy one.
Yeah, and the elves show up as well at some point, which...
Yay!
Yeah, we'll get to them in a bit, just because there's some stuff where... Because a lot of stuff's not explained, I think some stuff has more weight in it than it probably should at points.
Okay, I see what you mean.
Yeah. Because from here, we go to Faramir's hideout at Henneth Anun.
A cave. It's a cave.
Yeah, this is where we learn about the plottings between the Easterlings and the Southerners aligning with Sauron.
Mm-hmm.
Which... Them pulling out the map was a great way of reestablishing the scale of the world.
Yes, it helps a lot, because honestly, jumping between all three groups does kind of make Middle-earth feel small.
Yeah, and I mean, we're all over the place on this map too, because I mean, it takes, I think if I remember right, from Isengard to Minas Tirith, it's like a 7-day journey.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, the entire Lord of the Rings takes place over... I think a little bit under a year.
They book it.
Yeah.
some serious steps.
Well, I mean, when all you've got to do is be walking, that's
true.
That's all you do. But it's also a nice way of rescaling the hobbits and grounding them again.
Mm-hmm. It is.
Because the only place we've seen in this movie is Merry and Pippin up against orcs, and then against Ents.
Yes.
So it's just reestablishing Frodo and Samwise a little bit further.
Yeah.
Which I do. So I have some thoughts on the hideout a little bit.
Okay.
There's good ways of developing the relationship between Gollum and Sam and Frodo.
Mm-hmm.
While Frodo is trying to be good and spare Smeagol, I think it just doesn't come across as well as Smeagol not understanding him trying to help.
I see what you mean.
Yeah, it's just kind of... It's real quick of like, I'm trying to help you, and then they take Gollum away, and it's like...
Yeah. It does feel a little shallow.
Yeah, which... I mean, I do like his killing the fish moment.
I do too. Like the Smeagol...
Ditty.
Yeah, I don't think the Smeagol part is where I have qualms. I think it's the quick agreement to turn him in.
Yeah, I mean, he's kind of pressured quick moment to do it.
Yeah. And I mean, like, it's all good logic. It just, I feel like it could have been filled a little bit. Yeah,
and, I mean, it's a little awkward, and, I mean, it's important in learning that Faramir is Boromir's brother, yes. And that he's known of his death. The boat sailed to him. He found his horn cut in half to begin with.
Yeah.
And we also get that little bit of a flashback to learn more of, like, the family dynamic.
And how much of an ass their dad is.
Yeah, because and to give perspective, the flashback is about them taking back Osgiliath.
Mm-hmm.
And the dad comes down and is like, you did a good job. Your brother lost this fortress a month ago.
Your idiot brother who's literally standing right behind him.
Yeah. No, just insults him right to his face.
Yeah. It's like, oh, favoritist son, how I love you mostest. And then there's your brother, the ass.
Yeah, because he says, we know your brother's qualities.
Yeah.
Because at this point, like, they have to divulge to him that, hey, we're carrying the ring. And Boromir's probably already figured that out already. Or not Boromir, Faramir's figured that out already.
Yeah, it's hinted at.
But now it's also showing... Because when I remember watching this as a kid, I always thought Faramir was a good guy from the beginning.
Yeah, like it is a very subtle change.
Yeah,
for Faramir. Because
he actually really starts off as more of an antagonist. Because we know his lineage, and we know that he's
got some sour taste in his mouth.
Yeah, and these are men who the last one of his kind that Frodo came across tried killing him.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. It's a good scene, but it's still kind of awkward a little bit.
Yeah.
But, and side note, because of that, why it was changed is that in the book he's a goody two shoes, but
it doesn't work in the context of this movie, though.
No, not at all.
Because we really don't get a whole lot of drive between him, his dad, and Boromir. Mm-hmm. We get the flashbacks. We get a much more development between father and sons as opposed to the two boys together.
Yeah.
And so without that background from the book, it's really hard to justify the two-shoesness of him trying to live up to be his brother as opposed to just letting him be him, trying to be himself.
Yeah.
While always being the fuck up.
Well, and it also it allows him to have a redemptive arc too, and be like, hey, he's trying to be Boromir still. He's going to bring the Ring of Power to his father, and
doing so in a much smaller window because, truthfully, Faramir is barely in the movies.
Yeah,
as on the scale of things, kind of like how Boromir was yes, a huge part of it, like definitely moved a lot of plot, but as far as like screen time, dialogue, he's a light character.
Yeah.
So you have to portray a lot in a short amount of time with him.
Yeah. And I think they did a good job with him, honestly.
I do too. And honestly, like, especially after, like, the third or fourth watch, I do remember that Faramir ended up with his own little gang of, like, fandom.
Yeah.
Like, there was enough people who that small role and portrayal was enough for people to be like, you know what? I like that brother. That one's my favorite.
Well, and it also sets another balance to push Aragorn to be even more of like the pure human kind of look. The
better leader.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But also small little bit I want to talk about the set pieces. Mm-hmm. I think it was Jackson who stated that additionally that the map was to reorient ourselves. But despite it being a cave and everything, he wanted everything to feel like it was a working base. That's why we see like crates of supplies.
Yeah.
There's that table so that way they can plan stuff.
Yes, like it is as functional as they can make it.
Yeah. Also, the waterfall apparently was a pain in the ass to make because it was done indoors. It was a full set.
Of course it was.
And the detergents used would foam up at the bottom.
Yeah, that does tend to happen.
And so they had to do some other random stuff to add to it. Or add some other chemicals to prevent it from doing that. Also, Gollum's song was improvised.
And it is perfect.
Yeah.
And it has lived on many a year.
Yeah, but also just a little bit of lore since it isn't explained much in the movie. But Henneth Anun is a ranger hideout.
Which explains, like, I know they don't explain it, but they do lean into it. The clothing design, the way everyone's moving, the way everyone is captured. Yes. Heavy ranger.
Yeah, they're like the scouts, basically. Yes. But this is specifically for the Rangers of Ithilien. Yeah. Who are somewhat related to the Rangers of the North that Aragorn is a part of, but they are both descendants of the Dunedain. Yeah. Who are the people who went from Numenor at the start of the Second Age and returned at the Third Age to settle the North. That was lost to and the only people who survived are from the North were because of Elrond's aid, and the other half founded Gondor, which is where Faramir's group is based out of. Yes, and we'll talk more about Gondor, Minas Tirith, and in the third episode as well. Yeah. It's because there's a lot there.
Oh, yeah.
Or, sorry, Osgiliath and Minas Tirith. But also, I think the flashbacks are important because it really sows the seeds of Boromir's betrayal. Yes. I think that's the biggest part of why they're even in the movie, because honestly, it could have been without, and I think in the theatrical version there aren't the flashbacks.
No, I think they are just for the extended cut.
Yeah, and it does bring Sean Bean back, and it's good to see him. Yes.
But I mean, he does a great job as always.
Yeah, and it also redeems him as a character just a little bit more.
It rounds Boromir out better, because it would be way too easy to just hate Boromir through and through. Well, he has his redemption in the first movie, but without the extended scenes, it'd be really easy for him to just be like stalking the ring. Yeah. Because the extended edition in the first one is the only time you see him like teaching the hobbits anything. Without that little tidbits, he's just kind of following Frodo around like a creepy man.
Yeah, he's a representative of the other half of the world of men. Yes. Which is kind of interesting because no one from Rohan was brought into that council.
I don't think they were told.
Probably not.
I feel like Gondor was told to tell other people, and Gondor didn't.
Well, and that's the thing too, is they're really setting up his father to be a real dickhead.
Oh my god, the biggest dickhead on the entirety of the world. Yeah. Which is saying something, because this world is run by dickheads.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it also isn't showing, it's also showing that they're not oblivious to what Elrond is planning. Yes. They're also scheming, and there's more inner turmoil that's well-rounded.
Yes. Yeah. There's very few parties who don't have an agenda. Yeah. Of some kind.
Yeah. And, so from this part, we go to Aragorn, this is the part where he sees the Uruk. I got way ahead of myself on some of that. Yeah, that's okay. And he hastens to Helm's Deep, which, goddamn, New Zealand's gorgeous.
New Zealand's so pretty.
Yeah, and I like that Gimli's so caring, and he's like...
He's such a sweet guy.
Yeah, he's like, oh, well, you...
And Legolas is emotionally stunted as ever. Bless him.
Legolas
looks Aragorn... constipated at all times.
Yeah. But there's also that bromance between the two of them.
There's a triplet bromance going on here in a different love triangle at all times.
Yeah, and there's something just even between Legolas and Aragorn that's just a little bit different.
Yeah, and I also I appreciate the juxtaposition of Legolas not really knowing how to confront people about death.
Yeah, well, yeah,
like,
I'll get to that.
Especially not someone he honestly barely knows.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I think just having them all, it's an interesting camaraderie that, in a way, makes me think of like how streamers today on like Twitch and stuff, they start building the communities, and the communities are built around that one friend that we know through the internet.
Exactly.
Who we watch the games they play.
Yeah.
But also this part of Aragorn returning shows that the King of Rohan is very reflective of the kings of old.
Yes.
He's blind to new information, and
the old ways have always worked in the past. Why change it?
Yeah, no one's broken through Helm's Deep. We've always fallen back here. And he's like, well, we need to get help from Gondor, and he's like,
why?
No, we won't.
Those dickheads? Hell no.
Yeah, they didn't help us when the Hintermark fell.
Yep. Which seems to be a recurring theme in Lord of the Rings.
Yep. And then we get a quick cut back to the Ents and the Entmoot. Honestly, some of the other Ents are a little cartoonish.
Yes, they are. But I like them because they reminisce of the previous versions of Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
Where you get the almost, like, animated expressions, you get, like, folk-tale-y cartoonishness to them. And it's a nice nod to that, especially since, honestly, the Ents are they're barely in the movies.
Yeah, only Treebeard's really in it.
And even then, we're about to say goodbye.
Yeah, well, we got a whole half of a movie before we say goodbye.
But in the grand scheme of things, small.
Yeah. Also, all the Ents are based off different trees.
Yes, they're so cute.
Yeah. And so we're back to Helm's Deep again. The one-sided romance from Éowyn, Éowyn. God, some of their names are so similar.
Yes, human girlfriend.
Yeah, those are her feelings are put to rest pretty much. Caves look cool though.
Oh yeah, no, love it.
Yeah, and I do like that they keep emphasizing that duty and strength takes many forms.
Yes, it's a nice variation on the war situation.
Yeah, where we had like victory gardens and whatnot.
Yeah, it is an interesting tie-in of like the different ways.
And it's not propagandic in the way of like Starship Troopers or I'm doing my part.
Yes, it feels much more realistic to like war affects everyone, even if you're not the one fighting it.
Yeah, but it also, we start to see this buildup of how tired everyone from Rohan really is. And
they just hiked across their country.
Well, not even that. Like, I mean, the country was rotting from the beginning.
Yeah.
As far as we've seen it.
And like when they're previously were told, don't take any valuables, bring only what you need. Did you see a single person walk around with anything nice? No. Like, they're trying to decide whether or not they should bring a basket.
Yeah.
These people have it rough.
Yeah, and we do have that little nice moment where the two kids that are sent off when the wild men attack are reunited with their mom.
A sweet, brief moment before they all die.
Yeah, I mean it's something nice to bring a little hope to what's going on.
Yes.
But in these lead up scenes, Jackson said he tried building up the battle for Helm's Deep and the sense of dread, similar to what they did in the movie Zulu.
Which, honestly, this is a good starting point, because once we get to Return of the King, it's all war all the time.
Yeah.
This is our first real war. Mm-hmm. And having this build-up, having this tension of knowing the army is coming and how big it is versus how unprepared everyone in Rohan is a really nice, like, set up to the feel of the rest of the theme of the movie. Yeah.
And for those unfamiliar, because I know Zulu's now kind of a little bit of an obscure-ish movie.
It's old.
It's a 1964 film depicting the Battle of Rorke's Drift, in which a few hundred British soldiers fended off about 3,000 to 4,000 Zulu warriors.
It is very 300 Spartan-esque, but British.
Yeah, very much so. But I think it's a solid movie.
Oh, it is. It is.
Has Michael Caine in it.
He can't go wrong.
Jaws 4 would say otherwise.
I loved it.
You like even worse garbage than I do at times, so...
This is true. True.
So, we return back to the Entmoot, where Merry confronts the Ents in a very nice contrast to, like, the Hobbit nature that shows...
He's finally frustrated of niceties.
Yeah, because he's made these bonds with people, and he's like, hey, you guys need to call to action. Like, we're losing people. And the Ents are like, it is not our issue. It
is a wonderful retelling of the Hobbits.
Yeah.
Without actually using the Hobbits.
Mm-hmm.
Where now they can see how it doesn't matter whether or not Hobbiton is peaceful. Yeah. It doesn't matter whether or not the trees are fine at the moment.
Well, I don't know if it's in this one or the next one, because there's multiple flashes back and forth to the Entmoot.
Yes.
But there's that part where Mary's like, hey, maybe we just go back to the shop, or next one. Pippin's like, yeah, okay, next one. All right.
But yeah, it's a nice reinforcement, and like we finally get to really see Mary's growth.
Yeah.
As like he's finally understanding that like the world, even though it is big and wide, he's still in it.
This is the one where where it's we have just finished saying good morning.
Yes.
But it's already night.
Yes, we have agreed you are not orcs.
Mm-hmm.
It's very government.
Yeah. Well, maybe that's what the Ents are supposed to be, the bureaucracy of it all.
Yeah, potentially. Yeah. Again, it's Tolkien. There is no parallel, according to Tolkien.
No. There's a lot of parallel.
There's so much parallel.
But we cut back to Helm's Deep again, where Aragorn and Legolas are kind of having a hush discussion as everyone's getting ready, and he's like, dude, you're gonna die if you stay here.
Yeah.
He's like, but I have to. And it's kind of revealed that Aragorn's suicide mission is more of like devotion and leadership, and really showing that he is the leader that he needs to be.
Yeah, and that he has finally realized that, like, I might have picked a shitty time to stop running, but I have to do it at some point.
Yeah, exactly.
Now's as good a time as any.
He's backed into a corner like everyone else.
Yes.
And at this point also the elves arrive. I know we're trying to avoid book differences, but I like where they were trying to add a small glimmer of hope for men of like, okay, we've been talking about how Helm's Deep's so pointless. Well, the elves have arrived. Maybe this will change the battle.
And I do think for the audience anyway, this does add a level of hope.
Mm-hmm.
Because when the elves come, it has been made very clear before this that there are no real soldiers left for Rohan.
Yeah.
They've kicked them all out on accident. Whoops, our bad.
Yeah.
And so now we are left with old men and boys.
Oh yeah, because we forgot to mention that Gandalf has left already, saying, look for me on the third, or the dawn of the fifth day.
Yes. And so...
Which you do kind of forget that, getting into everything.
Yeah, no, seeing the armies come, and then seeing how, like, we are literally equipping children to fight more, and then, like, old men who can barely lift the crossbow.
Yeah, and then Gimli, whose chainmail won't fit him.
Poor Gimli.
But the elves arriving are kind of parallel to how Galadriel gave, like, the vial to Frodo. It's that little flickering of hope.
Yes, because when the elves come, they don't just show up, they come as an army.
Yeah.
And they immediately line up as an army, ready to stand.
And I will say, people might bitch about it, but it's better than what they were trying to do to get Arwen to come and fight like they originally wanted.
Yeah, this is better.
Yeah.
This is better.
But of side note, the elves are actually off fighting other forces. They weren't just not doing anything during the whole trial. But also, we get these little bit of weird psychic connections between the psychic connections we've seen have been
dream-esque,
but they've also been better than her having a sword, I'd say.
Yes.
They're giving more meaning for Aragorn instead of like, oh, my girl's in danger on the battlefield.
Well, and whether or not you like it, this leads better to her being conflicted with her father's wishes than if she had left to go be at the battle.
Yeah.
Because there's no way this man would agree to let his daughter just go fight in a battle, which would definitely kill her.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and I mean, yeah, it does lead better to Elrond's character.
Yes. Which, I mean, again, an important character doesn't get a whole lot of time to develop. This is a really good way to, like, solidify that decision.
Yeah, and it helps balance her for the next movie.
Exactly.
Where she doesn't really have that big of a part.
Yes.
Until the end. But since we're on the subject of elves, and we didn't really talk about their weapons much in the intro because the prologue we were more focused on the grand scale of how beautiful it was.
Yes.
But we finally do see more of the elvish people in battle in the Third Age, and their design is a lot more refined.
Yes.
In the prologue, their armors are green, but now they're browns to reflect they're kind of leaving the world and fall of leaves, whatever.
Blah, 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 green things.
But also their swords.
Yes.
They are so cool. They are scimitar-like. They are very fine and
elegant.
Beautifully crafted.
Yes.
And this is supposed to be like the finest point of elf craftsmanship because this is the end of there. This is the last stuff they'll ever make on Middle Earth, and elves are pretentious as shit.
That they are.
But and there's some stuff that you've brought up where there's some subtle comedy, but I feel the comedy in most of this is placed rather realistically.
Yes.
Like, it's not just someone cracking a joke in the middle of battle, it's the prep and everything of, like, little nods and, like, little joking here and there.
Yes.
Because, yeah, I don't know. The build-up, I don't know, there's some parts of the Two Towers where it kind of drags a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit.
But there's also important in character development because Aragorn, not only is he going to be on the battlefield, he helps a kid sharpen his sword, and he's like, this will keep you safe.
Yeah. It's also reestablishing character development for all of them. So, like, how King Theoden is working versus how Aragorn is working. Yeah. And then also seeing the prep, even though it's minor and kind of in the background, that Legolas and Gimli are doing to help, like, get people into the right formations. Yeah. Get themselves ready. They're not running.
Well, and that was a weird thing, too, is, like, and I know it's a little nitpicky, but Aragorn's the only one talking to the elves, and he's only talking in Elvish.
It's a very pretentious bullshit. But also the man was raised by these pretentious bullshitties. So, like, for the humans, this sucks. Yeah. But for the elves, this would be, like, a very nice welcome.
Well, it also makes sense, too, because Legolas really isn't a leader kind of thing, so...
No, he's the weird child who's been kicked out.
Well, yeah, to go hang out with the weird potential heir in the north.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I love this tense buildup because the orcs have arrived.
Yes.
We've got this stalemate that honestly... And this is the part where the orcs start banging their shields and stuff.
Yes. And it's very energy-driven.
Because they were bored as shit waiting around.
Yes, they were.
Also, there's this one... I do like how this battle begins.
I do too.
Because when they show up, and Theoden is... So it begins.
Yeah. Doom and gloomy.
I love that it begins by an accidental firing.
Yes.
That is solely...
feels so correct.
Well, and it solely relies on... The reason it feels correct is because it feels like it was fired by an inexperienced soldier.
It was. It was an old man who couldn't hold it any longer.
Yeah, exactly. It was... Well, that's what happens when you get old, but... but also, like, the elves... They're interesting in this. Yes. Just... Their archery skills are insane of like just shooting over people, but I don't know. It's interesting.
It is.
But also one thing I found interesting was the berserkers.
Yes.
And how much little detail went into every single Uruk-hai because there was little things here and there. Every single role
Mm-hmm.
has a different helmet. They have a different type of sword.
Like, their armies were fully thought through.
Yeah, which, again, makes them more than just bad guys.
Yes.
Because we did mention that there's no armor on their backs. But their blades, we did say that they look haphazard, but their blades are just giant cleavers, which
menacing as hell.
makes them more like butchers.
Yes.
And wild animals than anything. And even like the berserkers. And what I mean by berserkers are the ones that are on the ladders are sent up to drop into the parapet.
The ones that probably gonna die.
Yeah. They have double-edged swords.
Yes.
So that way they can just swing back and forth and just
do the most damage possible before they're mowed over.
Exactly.
Like, the entire army's on a suicide mission and is here for it.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, I mean, we talked about like how much consideration all the races fight differently.
Yes.
And we really get to see this play out in these scenes. But also speaking of weaponry, there's a pump action crossbow.
It is so cool.
It was added to speed up action, but it is actually derived from an 18th century German artillery book.
And
or an 8th century, some old century.
Old century, and like it's one of those pieces of equipment that after the like third time you watch this movie, you really pick up on, and you're like, oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
And like the amateurs of how they get the ladders up, that's awesome. Like that physics would work. But when you're first watching it, you don't necessarily like hone in on this creative weapon.
I did a little bit of digging, real quick digging, because I was curious. The first evidence of a repeating crossbow comes from the 4th century BC in the state of Chu in China.
You know what? This doesn't surprise me too much, because having played much paintball, the first thing everyone tries to do is figure out how to fire as fast as possible.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, the faster you're firing, the less time they have to fire back.
Yeah.
Well,
this feels like a good advantage.
Yeah, and I just thought it was something that was kind of interesting.
It's a good detail.
Yeah.
Like, it's a good way to speed up without, like, adding some level of fakeness.
Yeah, because crossbows take a long time to load.
Especially depending on which kind you have in your film, too. Like, some of them are 2-person reload system.
Yep. Also, this scene is interesting because this is also another use of the massive system. And they did a fantastic job making it seem real.
Yes.
Because I think they mentioned they could only make like 100 of these costumes at a time and maintain them.
Yeah. I mean, it's a lot.
That is a lot. I'm not saying like 100's like a small number by any means.
No, but if you only have 100 on screen, it doesn't feel like an army.
No.
In fact, we've watched plenty of movies where like the bad guys line up across the field and it's supposed to be like this innumerable amount of people, and you're like, that's like one row deep.
Yeah.
Like, I could take them.
That's maybe 50.
I could take them. This feels like an absurd number.
Yeah.
On both sides.
Oh, not really on the human side. The human side does feel like they are outnumbered.
They are no, I totally agree. Outnumbered, but what I meant was Helm's Deep doesn't feel empty.
No.
Like, they didn't have the number of extras to, like, stock Helm's Deep to the armpits.
Yeah.
And by having those extra CGI people in the background, Helm's Deep doesn't feel like 5 guys holding out against a couple thousand.
Yeah.
It feels like we don't have an army. We have a bunch of old people fighting. But we do have a lot of people hanging out in here.
Well, we have a bunch of elves and one dwarf.
One single dwarf. Hope he doesn't die.
But also apparently filming of this scene was very hellish.
Yes.
And the actors were waiting around for quite a while and also wet and cold, and
it looked miserable.
Yeah. I don't blame them for stomping their spears of like, hey,
cold.
Hurry up, guys. Hurry it up a little bit.
But also, it just adds the right amount of energy and tension.
Yeah. Sound design note. This was their war cries was done in a cricket stadium that they could only get like a couple takes because, surprise, surprise, Sports ball fans love their sports team and can't follow directions.
Fact.
Yeah, they'd shout out some stuff about their teams or something, and
players, chants, yeah.
Yeah, and Jackson's like, "Oh, we can't use any of that, guys," even though telling them beforehand.
Yes.
Yeah. Also, we're coming to probably my least favorite part of the entire Lord of the Rings.
Really?
This is the beginning of Peter Jackson. Well, not the beginning. He did it one more time earlier in the first movie, but him bringing in the Wilhelm scream.
Yes. Yes, he did.
I think he only uses it once in this battle.
I think you're correct there.
But when it comes to Return of the King...
Oh, it's everywhere. It's all over the place.
It is obnoxious. I get having a little nod to it here and there, but he blatantly uses the Wilhelm scream, which is a comedic scream,
but he likes
for an
it
important
so much.
part.
Yes.
It just frustrates me. That's the one bit of comedy for me that kind of destroys it doesn't ruin it, it just sours the battle.
It's not as clever humor as the rest of the battle.
No, not really at all.
Because the fight between Gimli and Legolas to get the most deaths is a clever camaraderie way. It's still their competitive spirits, but now they have something to do together. The jokes about Gimli's height all feel like a good tension break.
Yeah.
Even the little jabs that they make during battle all feel like bonding in a way.
Yeah.
The Wilhelm scream just kind of, it's too recognizable.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And to be fair, in the later battles, he doesn't use the full-on thing, and it's kind of quieted in the back.
Someone definitely toned him down a little bit.
Yeah, but this one just...
It's very full force.
Yeah. But while that's going on, we cut back to the Entmoot, which is still going on.
Boy, they talk a lot. Very slowly.
So slow. I think this is the part where Merry or Pippin's like, let's just go back home.
Yeah.
And then Merry's like, there won't be a home if this ends.
Yeah.
You realize the Shire is gonna burn.
What are we gonna do to stop them?
Yeah, this is the Hobbit Holy Grail, dude.
Yeah.
We got our own personal bodyguards protecting us to the north because we're adorable.
We can't out-cute our way out of this.
No. And so we cut back to the battle at Helm's Deep. We get the Olympic torch moment.
Yep, which, a little corny, but also, I don't hate it.
No, I like it.
Yeah, it's a little, corny.
Yeah.
But, I don't care.
No.
It fits. Because we know, as an audience of the modern age, we know what is going to happen.
Mm-hmm. Well... We do, and...
Especially if you watch the extended cut and see the bomb that they're making.
Yeah. No, that one's really cool. Yeah, we forgot to talk about that, because there's that bit where, they're
Wormtongue almost blows them up.
Yeah, exactly. But as iconic as it was, Jackson was a little bit cautious of doing this due to the rise of suicide bombers in the media.
I can understand the hesitancy.
Because we do have to remember this movie came out a year after the World Trade Center attacks, the 2001 ones.
And people were very sensitive at the time.
Yeah, and still are.
Yes.
And then we get a little cut back to the Entmoot again. Well, Helm's Deep's now burst wide open.
All hell, breaking loose.
Yeah, we get a little cut to Merry and Pippin being called to action despite being small.
Aw, so cute. Good for them.
And then we cut back to Helm's Deep, where we have this battering ram scene where we get the very iconic, no one tosses a dwarf.
Yes. And also, I think a very brief moment of Jackson putting himself back there as one of the extras.
I can't remember.
I think he's helping hold the door.
Maybe.
I can't remember. He's somewhere over that area is where he decided to insert himself in this movie.
And I think his kids were a couple of the refugees in Helm's Deep.
Yeah, I think so.
But I do like this. I do like this constant back and forth because we get the little bit of peacefulness with what's going on with Merry and Pippin, but then we cut back to Helm's Deep,
and it also helps the audience really stand on Merry and Pippin's side of like, no, we have to act.
Yeah.
Like, people are actively dying.
Yeah, and like the whole battering ram bit is actually pretty important too, because like it continues to show the hopelessness of like, hey, we have to send 2 people out to knock them away from the gate a little bit so we can try and refortify it.
Yeah.
Which Theoden takes a spear to the shoulder.
Yes.
Which
I feel so bad.
Yeah. But I mean, it just shows Aragorn's like frantic desire to
help.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just trying to control everything. And really, this is kind of like his test to be king.
Yeah, it really is.
He's going through like his own like Herculean trials, unintentionally, like, oh, you have to go out and kill this person. It's like, no, I'm going to stay behind and I'm going to lead.
Yes.
But yeah, and then we cut again back to the Hobbit's logic to go south.
Mm-hmm.
I love Treebeard and his like
idioms.
Well, idioms and just his thought process.
I do too.
There's that one little bit where he's like, the hobbits are like, let's go south. Oh, but Isengard's that way. Well, that they won't expect us to come that way. He's like, well, you are very small, and I don't understand, but I'll do it for you. I'll humor you.
I also like I like going south. Feels like going downhill.
Yes. I mean...
He's not wrong. South does feel like down.
Depends on where Middle Earth is. Or your orientation.
For me, south is always downhill. Like, if you're not good with directions, yeah, why not?
Yeah.
Downhill.
Yeah, I mean, we do refer... I'm going down to...
Exactly.
Yeah. Makes sense. Also, they did actually have a hard time battering that door down.
It was very well fortified.
Yeah, the crew designed it quite well.
Which honestly works out in their favor, because originally, before Baum was invaded by Evil Wizard Man, that would have been the one weak point.
Yeah.
So why wouldn't it have been as beefy as possible?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, it does work.
Yeah, like, it is the impossible task that has happened twice in one battle.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right on that. Helm's Deep is falling.
Yeah.
Because they do have to fall back to that first gate.
Yeah.
Which I'll get to in a minute, which is actually about to happen. But I went down a little side tangent because that's what I do, and now you must listen. The oldest known depiction of a battering ram, because I was just curious of like, how long have battering rams been around? Because I went down the rabbit hole of the crossbow.
Tell me about the battering ram.
The first known depiction of a battering ram is the tomb of an Egyptian 11th dynasty noble Keti, which puts it somewhere between 2150 BC and 1991 BC, or 1991 BC. 1991 BC. It's weird to say.
I like that we have been using trees to beat each other up for a long time.
Yeah. Be the one who carries the bigger log.
Yes.
Also of note, because as they're falling back, the elf leader dies, so I think it's supposed to be Faramir, or he's supposed to be one of the sons of Elrond.
Kind of. They make a nod to him, but they don't want to actually have him be that, because then they'd have to introduce both of them and explain that he has other kids.
Yeah.
And so, important elf.
Well, and they mentioned that they killed him off because it was to show the elves face mortality in a different way. And I don't think
this is a big stake for them. Like, fighting is, like, that's high risk for them.
Not really. So,
I mean, in their eyes.
It doesn't even come across as that, but not really, because here's the thing.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't explain much, but I know they don't explain it at all in the movies, but elves' bodies are mortal, and when they die, their spirits return to Valinor, where they rest, and then they are brought back to a new body that looks exactly like the one they inhabited first.
And you're telling me these fuckers respawn?
Yes.
God damn it.
In the Undying Land, though.
Well, I mean, boo-hoo, now they respawn in a safe spot.
Yeah.
God damn it.
Yeah, no.
These fuckers have nothing to lose.
Elf death means nothing.
Elf death means nothing.
It doesn't say how long it takes them to respond, so it could be a long-ass time, but...
But also, if you're immortal, like, That's not that long.
Yeah.
You got forever.
I mean, hell, Gandalf was gone a whole 2 minutes, and look at him. He forgot everything. He forgot he was called Gandalf.
Yes. But he did learn how to straighten and comb his hair.
Yes, and dress a lot cleaner.
And trim his beard.
And smoke less, too.
For now.
For now. And from here, we cut back to Samwise and Frodo, who have been taken to Osgiliath.
Oh, yeah. We kind of forgot about them.
Yeah, they're really not in this movie that much.
No, they really aren't.
But their little bits are important. Because we have this is to build the building tension between men. Because this city's in ruins.
Yes.
It's under siege again.
Yeah, it's not having a good time.
Yeah, we don't know how long it's been. It's been before, it was taken back probably right before the council.
Yes.
And so now it's already fallen again. So Faramir's still kind of tangentially a fuck up.
Yeah, he can't get anything right according to his dad.
No, not at all.
Even though this is definitely not his fault.
No, not at all. And the size of the set did have to be scaled back a little bit because of costs.
You're telling me this movie took a lot of money to make?
Just a little, a penny. But they really did a good job of conveying the city as being much larger.
Oh, yeah.
And part of that was because they recycled bits of ruins from other sets.
Yes.
Also, the intent was to make it feel like a 1945 post-Blitz.
Yes, and which, success. It feels bombed, despite the fact that bombing has only now been invented.
Well, and it's not even bombing,
just everything is torn to shreds.
Well, because we do see one of the towers fall. It gets hit with a giant rock.
Yes. We do have catapults.
Yeah, so it's being bombarded with giant fucking rocks.
Yeah.
Which, that was a physical prop. That was practical.
It looks great.
It is very well edited together. But also, it's used to set Mount Doom in the background to show that it's creeping ever closer, guys.
Yeah, and it also helps to, establish that, the closer we get to Mountain Doom, nothing is safe.
Yeah.
It has been creeping outwards slowly for a while now.
Yeah, and, yeah, I mean,
it's not contained within its walls anymore.
Yeah, well, because everyone's being attacked at this point. We're now showing that probably the reason Gondor hasn't responded is because Gondor's having its own shit to deal with.
They are losing ground actively.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They couldn't be called on.
No. Who would they send? Sir Fuckup and his 6 friends?
Nope, they sent Boromir.
Yeah.
Which is also Sir Fuckup.
And his one friend.
Yeah. But now we cut to the Ents, who are called to action because Treebeard sees the scourging of Fangorn.
And finally understands.
And we get the last march of the Ents.
Which is so badass.
Also a solid Fall Troy song.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But I think it's important because it was needed to show that Merry and Pippin are becoming more active in the world.
Yes.
Of course, Merry more so, and Pippin still being the idealistic youngling he is.
I mean, but he's also not, shied away from it.
No, he really hasn't. I mean, he's more so following after Merry.
Yes. And
in a good way, too. It's not...
They very much, despite not actually being brothers, very much remind me of, the younger brother who he sees how the older brother is, and is like, well... we're in this together. Yeah,
we've robbed the farmer so many times. We've done it as a pair.
Yeah, we might as well keep going.
Yeah, and it is a cool scene because we also the trees start moving
actively.
Yeah.
Yes, and this is one of the. There's a handful of scenes from this movie that I think reiterated Tolkien's love of old world lore and magic, and the full forest marching to battle, I think, is one of them.
Yeah.
Where, it is not truly written down anywhere, but at the same time, everyone has somewhere deep in their lore the walking trees. Or the forest being dangerous.
Oh, yeah.
Whereas, this is a very active representation of that.
Yeah, well, we even have a theory for it. I think it's called the Dark Forest theory of if we ever make contact with outside our Earth life kind of stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. And I do like it. It's really showing the importance of hobbits in the world. Because honestly, all this infighting is kind of calmed by the hobbits doing what the others can't do.
Yeah. And like focusing their efforts onto one joint effort.
Yeah. Keeping
the eyes on the prize.
Exactly. And we also get this bit where we cut back to Osgiliath, where Frodo's strength is waning.
Frodo's becoming more and more dickish.
Oh, yeah. And
grumpy Frodo.
Becoming more Gollum.
He really is. And also he reminds me desperately of those sleep-deprived kids in college. Man needs a nap.
I need a nap, too. That's just life in general. But we now really get a good look at the Nazgul and their fell beasts.
So spooky.
Oh, they are so scary.
I love it. And they feel like they belong to the world of Lord of the Rings easily. Mm-hmm. But they also feel like a horror prop that, despite not necessarily looking like it doesn't belong, if someone had told me like, hey, at one point Peter Jackson had this horror movie that he was planning and like that's what these are from, I would have been like 100%, yeah.
Well, and they had to change them up a little bit, again, referencing the book a little bit. They were designed to be more bird-like and less snake-like compared to the original descriptions.
Sure.
But I think he still did a good job
of they're still very snaky.
Yeah, they've got a very noodly face.
They do, and I like the bluntness of the head because it, instead of being snake, it's almost worm.
Yeah.
It's almost bug, centipede-esque.
Yeah, just a bit.
Where it's like, okay, if this thing had a perfect circle mouth, row of teeth,
it'd be the dune worm with wings.
Yeah. Which is exactly what I would be like. I would not be surprised if these fuckers also had a dune worm back there.
Yeah. Well, and they also always made me think of like the zoo from Final Fantasy X, even though those come from Mesopotamian religions.
Yes, but it's a primal fear animal.
Yeah, and I think it's because you've brought it up where like there's the uncanny valley of like our minds are trying to make it out to be something it's not.
Yes,
trying to understand it.
Like you're fully aware that thing's texture is probably sturgeon-esque. It's it's got that rubbery leather like creature feel, but at the same time it's not something you run into frequently.
No.
So like it is a hard creature to wrap your head around.
And they did something similar with the skin it makes me think of like a more creature that's seen daylight more than Gollum.
Yes.
But similar feel to like the skin.
It's like it's somewhere between leather and crispy, but also soft. Like you don't really truly know what it feels like until you've touched it. Kind of like a dolphin. Like until you've touched a sea creature, you're never 100% sure what it feels like.
I've never thought about what dolphins feel like.
And now you're going to be bothered, aren't you?
A bit, yeah.
Yeah.
Also, dolphins are dicks.
Yes. Fact. Active fact.
Yeah.
I have no desire to swim with dolphins, but I do know what they feel like.
No. Ugh. Is that what you're thinking they feel like, dolphin?
No, I've touched many a sea creature because I have an obsession with zoos and aquariums, and I am a child and will bully children out of the way to touch things in the petting zoo. And so I have touched many, like all of the things you can just like stick your hand in and touch, and then also managed to do some like fun family vacation sort of things.
Okay.
And so like, but it's one of those things where, especially when you don't realize how much touch affects how you watch a movie until it's wrong. Fabric is a great example. Until the fabric is wrong, you know what it feels like. You know what that cotton wool should feel like. You know what sound it's going to make just by looking at it.
It's like us in architecture where like we touch stuff. We touch buildings because we want to know like how that concrete actually feels.
Half of us went to Texas to see the museum specifically to touch the concrete.
Yeah.
Yeah. And these creatures work so well in the Uncanny Valley because, like, yes, you see them the whole way. They don't do the smile thing. They're not humanistic.
Yeah.
But much like a lot of sea creatures, until you touch it, you really don't know what it's going to feel like. You don't know what sound it's going to make. Like, there's a lot of unknowns to it.
Yeah, I generally avoid the ocean, so...
I understand. I have a deep, dark obsession.
The ocean is deep and dark.
Exactly.
But I do like the Nazgul's reintroduction at this point, because they're just creatures of pure hate, and they just spread terror, because...
Like, everyone is equally afraid of them.
Yeah.
Like, no one can take these fuckers on. Yeah,
and I mean, it just, it's just below, like, a dramatic reveal of, like...
Yeah. Like, this
what's coming up.
And this also feels like the trump card that they've been being played against.
Yeah.
Like, how do you fight against them? You can't.
No.
Like, they don't have the Eagles on their side. They don't have any air mounts. What are they gonna do? Shoot arrows at it?
Yeah, no, I think... Or try and hit it with a catapult and get lucky.
But as far as we've seen, for the most part, catapults aren't on, quote-unquote, the good guy's side. That's something that the enemy has been using, mostly.
Well, yeah, because the enemy is assaulting and the humans are defending.
Yeah.
They've had to get stuck in their fortresses.
Exactly. So, like, they're pretty much useless against these guys. This is their big weapon.
Yeah. But that part's quick, because we're back to, we're finally having the assault on Isengard.
Oh, yes. Which we finally get to see trees wreck shit.
Oh, and it's
glorious.
It's so cool. It's one of my favorite scenes, like, from when I was a kid, too, because, and just rewatching some stuff, we get to see, the Ents, as I put it, beating a motherfucker with another motherfucker.
Yes.
Because they're using the orcs as weapons.
Yes. Well, and it's, as you've said before, everyone fights differently.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the Ents are, like, the prime example of how different they fight than everyone else. They fight in both an animalistic and also smart way. They don't bring weapons. They fight with just themselves. They are the weapons. And then they also can pick up other things to beat others with it.
Yeah.
But at the same time, they're smart enough to go, what if we took out the dam?
Yep.
That would really mess with them.
Yeah, well, and so there's a few things here. One, I love the shocked expression on Saruman's face of, like, the fuck is happening?
Which cracks me up because he should know about the forest. He knew about the forest.
Yeah, he used to
to walk in the forest purposefully.
Treebeard says they used to talk to each other, but now Saruman doesn't care for things that grow.
No, so like this man actively looked over and went, "Oh fuck, yeah, I forgot about that."
Yeah. Yeah.
God damn it.
And also I do love, speaking of fighting techniques, Merry and Pippin just throwing rocks like little children thinking they're helping.
I mean, they're trying.
Yeah, because if I remember right, in the Hobbit descriptions, that's one of the things they're weirdly good at is throwing rocks.
They're very good at throwing rocks and conkers, or whatever it's called.
Yeah. Or what?
It's whatever child game Bilbo says he's good at.
Oh, I have no clue.
It's the equivalent of a rock on a stick, or a string, I think. You hit each other with
it.
it.
Knockers? Like,
yeah.
What... I only know their name because one of the characters in the second JoJo, uses clackers.
Clackers, that's it.
He uses that as his weapon for some stupid reason.
Hobbits are good at throwing rocks and hitting each other with toys.
They're odd creatures.
They are odd creatures.
But yeah, going back to the breaking of the dam, I love that.
Yes.
It still holds up. There are some parts that they did a good job. But water is always the hardest thing to scale.
Yes.
Because they did flood a set multiple times.
Yeah.
But they always had to, and I think they used like they used 2 shipping containers with every flood.
It never scales correctly. Water is one of the hardest things to make believable.
Yeah. And that's why you can always tell whether it's in a tank or whether they actually shot in the ocean.
Yeah.
Which makes Blade Runner 2049 have one of the most impressive beach scenes because
it's very realistic.
Yeah. Well, they built a giant wave machine to get it to work.
Yeah, and it's an impressive wave machine.
Yeah. But I do like this scene too because there is comedy in this too.
Yes.
We have that part where one of the Ents is on fire, but then when the bridge breaks or dam breaks, he runs over and sticks his head in it.
And I appreciate that Peter was like, yeah, we were gonna just let the Ent burn, but then I'd have to explain that to my kids, and I felt bad, so we had him put himself out. Yeah,
but then we have that other one that gets pulled down and they start hacking away at it with hatchets.
I think that one was less noticeable.
Yeah, just a little bit. He's already on the ground.
Yeah.
But there's a few things with this as well. One, again, it shows how history points out the folly of men.
Mm-hmm.
And how it's the classic nature versus
machine progress, quote unquote.
Yeah. But it also, what's the right term for it? It shows how quickly not even a good plan falls, because everything is put together so hastily that everything just crumbles so quickly.
Yeah, the only piece that stands is the tower, which wasn't even built by him.
No.
Is the only thing that remains.
Yeah, because even the wall's getting broken.
Yeah.
By the Ents.
They just tear it down.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a really cool scene. I love the assault on Isengard.
I do too. And like just the powerlessness of Sauron standing in his tower.
No, it's... Yeah, because he can't... What the hell can he do against a bunch of Ents?
Nothing.
Well, and that's the thing too. So, Ents, and I know this is more from the book, Ents are described as not moving as much, obviously.
Yeah.
But in doing so, they're storing up all that power. So their assault on Isengard is years upon years,
yes,
or decades upon decades of storing up power and releasing it.
Yes, they are the ultimate weapon.
Yeah, they kind of remind me of that saying that the general from the Japanese army said after Pearl Harbor, "I fear we've awoken a sleeping giant."
Yes,
and that's basically what happened with the Ents. Is Saruman didn't respect them.
Should have known.
Killed their friends.
Yeah, should have known and chose to ignore it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wizard, he's not as smart as he thinks he is.
No.
And remember, the reason he's like what we have left at Isengard was like just like probably the cooks and like the crew.
Yeah.
Because he sent his entire army to Helm's Deep to crush it.
Yeah, it is a bare bones group at this point.
But that also shows that he didn't take the Ents seriously to begin with.
No, he left himself open and exposed.
Exactly, and that's where his folly is.
Yeah, he felt himself too smart.
Yeah, and now we cut back to Osgiliath, where Frodo tries offering the ring, and he loses control a little bit as Sam pulls him down, and it's a little heartbreaking.
Yeah,
because it shows the ring's corruption.
And we finally truly lost Frodo.
Yeah, because there's that one moment where he pulls his sword out and holds it up to Sam, and he's like, you see the anger.
Yeah.
Great job by Elijah Wood and Sean Astin in it.
Yeah, which is saying something because I feel like most of all three of these movies is mostly for Elijah Wood. Mm-hmm. All just eyebrow. Yeah. It's all just face acting because he really doesn't talk a lot.
No, not really. Which I think is great, too, because he really sinks into himself.
Yes, he feels like a very depressed character.
And just that little bit of, don't you recognize your Sam?
Yeah, it's so heartbroken.
Yeah.
So heartbroken. And I know he's been, Sam and Frodo's relationship has been compared to a lot, but the don't you recognize your Sam line, I think for everyone really solidified that, Sam has moved past just, the friend helping him along. Yeah. And, has recognized, I'm gonna have to do this. Yeah. I have to take him with me, but I have to do this.
Yeah, Sam's role at this point has really changed from just being companion and just someone to look out for him, but it's very much so, I don't want to say keeper, it's something deeper than that. It goes beyond, brotherly affection kind of thing.
We've moved past basic bromance.
Oh yeah, way past it.
We have now moved into jaded and sad, depressed lovers.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah,
they have reached a point in a relationship that I know Rosie is sweet and wonderful, but she will never be Frodo.
Also, I think this part's kind of interesting as well because it reflects that. Because we don't know this yet. Mm-hmm. We'll see it at the start of Return of the King. This is Frodo's Smeagol Deagle moment.
Yes. Where But this is the advantage that Smeagol didn't have.
Mm-hmm.
Because where Smeagol and Gollum had to do this alone, which is why Gollum was created.
Yeah.
Frodo has a real person to have his other half be.
Yeah.
He can actively use Sam as a crutch to keep him where he is.
And actually does at one point or another.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a big moment because we also get Sam has a fantastic speech.
Oh, yes. It's really bringing into light that Sam has taken in more than what we all gave him credit for.
Yeah, which we did skip over something.
Yes.
There's a cutback to Helm's Deep where Theoden is about to give up, and Aragorn's like, you know what? No, we're gonna meet them in battle. We're gonna die like warriors.
We're gonna die like men!
Yeah.
Be a man!
I know exactly what you're referencing.
Don't give up. Die. Be a man.
But I think that's important because we have such desperate moments, because this is also that part where we get the look to the east on the 5th day or whatever.
Yeah, some bullshit riddle. Just show up already. Yeah.
But they do such a good job of revealing the Rohirrim returning.
And honestly, like, especially if you're, like, letting yourself get invested in this, you have forgotten about them.
Yeah.
Like, you have reached a point where, like, okay, well, I don't know how we're going to turn the tides of this battle. I know we have to, but boy, are we setting up to have just our main 3 take out an entire army? Because that'll be badass. Yeah. And then they show up, you're like, oh yeah, I forgot about you fuckers.
Yeah. And
about time.
Where they pair it is so well edited, because once they're out fighting and then the orcs are like, oh shit. Yeah. That's when Sam is like giving his little monologue.
And you finally get that swell of hope.
Yes. Yeah. That, hey, the tides are turning a little bit.
And we've already reached the literal tide turning with the trees and Merry and Pippin.
Yes. And I also like that there's that little bit of like, don't go into the forest.
Yeah, everyone, them trees are angry. You stay over here.
Well, and on top of that, I don't know if you remember, but Aragorn looks over. There wasn't a forest there to begin with.
No,
it's
the forest
magic pop-up forest.
Yeah, the forest actively walked over him and went, we're going to kill these fuckers.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes. And it's one of my favorite scenes from the book, and so it was really nice, while not as directly, like, obvious as the book made it, I really liked that it was brought into the movie in some way, even if it's really easy for you to forget that the forest wasn't already there.
Yeah. Because it is easy, because we don't get a lot of Helm's Deep to begin with.
You have to be paying attention for it.
Yeah, you get that one little glance over, but also the orcs have nowhere else to go.
No, they have to go into the woods. Yeah. It is blocking the exit.
Yeah, the only exit. Well, that and the Rohirrim, because they could go up that steep hill if they wanted.
That feels like a death trap.
Yeah.
They have the upper ground.
Yeah. But we get that little, like... It's a beautifully edited moment, honestly. It is. Because
it's all of the stories finally coming to a swell.
Yeah. And we talked that this movie doesn't really have like a beginning or an end.
No, but you kind of have to make one.
Yeah.
Because otherwise it would be just like, all right, see you for part 3.
Yeah, and it's also kind of a precursor to how the movie actually ends, because everything's so fragmented. Right now we have Merry Pippin's story with the Ents. We got the trio with Gandalf, and then we got Frodo and Samwise. Mm-hmm. So we really have 3 stories going on.
Yeah, and they are vastly different stories, even if they're mirroring each other.
Yeah, and all independent of each other, too. Yeah. But intertwined at the same time. Like, you could easily take each one of these and turn it into its own short movie.
Oh, easily.
Especially Frodo and Sam's journey in this movie.
That might just be one very short story.
Yeah. And so, once the tides have turned, we get a little bit with Merry and Pippin finding Saruman's storeroom.
And how while he bitched to Gandalf about how weak he is for smoking weed and enjoying the finer things in life, turns out he's a fat liar and has been doing the same.
Yeah, which, it's a weird scene too. So I love Merry and Pippin.
I do too.
And their arc with Treebeard it's kind of a weird ending.
A little bit.
Because we've seen especially Mary grow so much with the Entmoot.
Yes.
But it just cuts back to that all they care about is food. And
it is
at the drop of a hat, they will revert back to being the dipshit hobbits they are.
Yes, but I also would argue that this little brief moment helps solidify the ending of the third one.
Yeah.
Because hobbits are the only creatures in Middle-earth who can bounce back from the horrors and go on to live their lives. Everyone else spends the rest of it is implied that part of the reason why hobbits are a good choice to hold the ring is because once they let it go, they can go back to being a happy hobbit. Bilbo goes back on to old and decrepit, but he finishes his book. He retires. Whereas nobody else seems to be able to do that. Death comes first.
Yeah, but I don't know if I'd call Frodo's returning to hobbits and happy.
Frodo was by far the most pushed hobbit of all time.
You do really feel bad for him.
There's a reason why they're like, hey, consolation prize, would you like to go to not here?
Well,
and he was like, yeah, I would.
Yeah, and I mean, I'll get to that and why Frodo is able to go over.
Yes.
But we cut back to Helm's Deep where they know about a nervous system.
Kinda, yeah.
Yeah, because there's that friendly little post banter where Legolas is like, "Hey, I killed this many." And Gimli's like, "No, that's good and all, but I killed one more."
Yes.
And then Legolas shoots between his legs, and he's like, What was that? He was dead. I saw him twitching. Well, that's because my axe is in his nervous system. It's like, I get it. It's
frog legs twitch when you boil them. I give it.
Well, yeah, but
I'll give it to him.
I don't know. It's just kind of a weird pairing for a movie that's supposed to be set pre-history.
Sure.
Knowing what a nervous system is.
Yeah, but also
I don't care. It's me being a little nitpicky.
Yeah.
But also we get the group of men riding up to the hill and overlooking everything, deciding what to do next. Fun fact: the random rider on the left was supposed to be edited out to someone else.
Yeah.
But they forgot.
And you know what? You didn't notice, did you?
No. If I was the extra, I'd be like, yo, they forgot me.
I would frame that fucker. It'd be above my toilet in my bathroom.
Yeah. And we do get this epic moment of, they're like, oh, it's over. And then Gandalf's like, no, the battle for Middle-earth has yet to begin. This is just the precursor to all this shit, guys.
And of course, Aragorn's over here like, God damn it, he's right again.
Yeah. And Aragorn's just pushed even further.
Poor Aragorn.
Yeah, but cut back to Frodo and Samwise, where Faramir ultimate releases them under punishment of death.
Yes. Which
never comes to fruition. There's not really
It feels like him putting on a face to what his brother might have done.
Yeah, he's showing that he's not his brother.
Yes.
That he's going to let them do what they want. But it's, I don't know, just the threat of, oh, you're letting them go, you'll be put to death doesn't ever play out.
No, but at the same time...
It kind of does.
It kind of does. Because it's him finally saying, you know what? I don't care what Dad says.
Yeah.
I've already lost the one person in my family who actually gave a fuck.
Yeah.
And this is what he gave, this is how he, these are who he died giving a fuck about.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna tell him no.
Yeah, no, that's exactly what it is. He's he's there, he is the one person in Rohan who is, putting his faith in the hobbits, as everyone else has.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we got a little bit of Sam kind of coming around to Gollum a little bit.
I think now that Sam has seen Frodo slipping...
Yeah.
He's like, you know what? You were somebody once.
Yeah.
And maybe you could be again.
Yeah, and just the whole thing of he was trying to save you. There's no hard feelings, right? And then you hear Gollum.
Yeah, there is hard feelings.
Yeah. It just foreshadowing the return of Gollum.
Poor Smeagol.
Yeah, which we get a little bit of reconciliation between Frodo and Sam. And it's sweet and it's heartwarming.
And it's a good wrap up for them.
It is, because they're still at the point where they're still optimistic.
They haven't lost all hope yet.
Because they're like, oh, wait till we get back. Do you think they'll tell stories of us in the Shire? Tell me the story of Frodo.
And yeah.
And his buddy Sam. And then Frodo responds like, I want to hear the part about Samwise.
Sam the Brave.
Sam the Brave. Like, yes. Frodo is a good hype man.
He really is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And same with Sam. Sam being
like, they're a good match to each other.
Yeah. They are such... And like we said, it goes beyond a bromance thing.
Oh, for sure.
Like, it is genuine love. But that part's a little bit short-lived because we have the return of Gollum, and his foreshadowed betrayal is a great way. Because I think... Because they told him what path they told Faramir what path they were going to take, and Faramir's like, you guys realize there's shit up there, right?
And they were like, yeah, it'll be fine.
Yeah, and I do like Faramir, who's like, hey, if something happens to them, I will hunt you down.
Yes. It feels like him finally coming into himself.
Yeah, because we do also forget a little bit that Aragorn and Gandalf were actively hunting Gollum for a while.
Yeah, and then once they were found, they were actively keeping an eye on him.
Yeah. Which they knew, that's how they knew he went into Mordor.
Exactly.
So, which, it's interesting.
Yeah.
But I do find that Gollum is a bit interesting in this part, because we really see him even more so under the tragedy of of evil influence.
Yeah.
Where absolute power corrupts absolutely, but it's also showing that he can't ever fully turn to good.
He can't
because
keep the habit.
Because he has his defense mechanism already in place.
Yeah, it is unfortunately too late for him.
Yeah.
Like, there is no going back.
Yep. And we get that bit of, come follow me, hobbitses. And
take you to her.
Yes. And we get a tilt up to Barad-dûr and Mount Doom.
And it is a wonderful tilt up, because it makes it all feel like it's so close.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you then see how far away Mount Doom is inside of Mordor.
Yeah.
Because for this whole time, both movies, your goal was Mordor.
Mm-hmm.
And then you realize, oh, no. Mount Doom is like in the middle of Mordor.
Yes.
We still have a long way to go.
Long way to go. We got a whole nother movie to go.
Yeah.
But, and I do like these endings, because they end on the big battles instead of confronting Saruman, which would have been a fine ending, but I think it would have been lesser than what we saw. It would have been feeling like it was dragging out. Yeah, and it was chosen to have a more humbling ending between Frodo and Samwise.
Yes.
And it shows a good hopefulness to the end of the movie instead of getting darker as the series continues to get.
And also, like, re-emphasizing that, like, hey, I know we didn't spend a lot of time on them, but Frodo and Sam really are, the main characters here. Remember that? Remember how they're important?
We're supposed to.
Yeah, it helps solidify them back again at the front of your mind.
Yeah, and, I mean, Two Towers is really a weird one.
It is.
Because, and I mean, we talk about in this episode the intricate detailing, but why the detailing is important, specifically in this movie, is because it isn't just detailing for detailing's sake.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't write who specifically said it, but in the special features, the reason they go into detail is because it rationalizes a theoretical culture.
Yes.
That's really what this movie is about.
Yes.
It's to add the little details to the characters and the locations and the environments.
It makes Middle-earth feel like an actual place in time and history.
Exactly. That's exactly what it is. And even then, like, all the music building on top of that adds to those worlds, because every movie has that really distinct soundtrack.
Yes, but they all tie together so strongly.
Yeah. And there's some inklings here of, like, what potentially would happen with Peter Jackson, because he did mention in the commentaries that he really wanted to make a war movie.
Yes.
Which Lord of the Rings is, but it's isn't. Not. Like,
war is in the movie, but it is not a war movie.
Yeah, and as we continue, we'll realize more so that the message is more so about understanding and caring for a fellow being.
Yes.
Regardless of whether they're an elf, a dwarf, human, which is why they have everyone incorporated.
Yes.
Like, there's not even, like... I think the only person who really has, like, a sickening aversion to the orcs is Gollum.
Yeah.
Because the only time anyone talks about the orcs is when they're going to kill them.
Yeah.
And it's only because the orcs are going to attack them.
Yeah.
Same with the Wildmen. They're not really talked about, like...
there is a potential time and place where everyone just existed.
Yeah. Yeah, and... Yeah, it's interesting. There's quite a bit to it.
There is. And this is part of the, like, the reason why, even though it's the weakest of the three movies, why Two Towers is so successful in and of itself is because it lets you have those questions.
Yeah.
And to let yourself wonder about the intricacies of the world, and, like, let yourself wonder about, like, oh, well, he mentioned that so-and-so wasn't there for this and this.
Yeah.
If you haven't read the books, if you aren't going to go down that wormhole of actual research, and even if you do, you've opened up an entire day's worth of daydreaming about, like, what that could have been, what that could have looked like.
Yeah. No, and yes, I'll also argue Two Towers is definitely the weaker of the trilogy.
And
but
there's no fault in that, though.
No.
It is the middle of the story, and the middle is never the most rememberable part.
No, it's always the big... but it is at the same time, like, there are big parts that are memorable.
Yeah, oh,
like,
for sure.
There's quite a few meme-ish stuff that comes from this. The one-liners are good.
And honestly, like, this sets up in a way that, like, without it, Return of the King wouldn't be what it is.
Yeah. No.
It wouldn't have the camaraderie that is needed for the next scene.
Yeah, and even with the side cast with Eomir and Éowyn, like, their
build is so important.
Yeah, same with Faramir. Like,
yeah, like, all of these side characters who, like, in normal movie settings, you don't end up caring about, and you just kind of push to the side. Lord of the Rings, especially Two Towers, managed to create these characters who, yeah, they're on the side, yeah, they're small beans, but I'm invested in them.
Yeah.
I want to know more about Faramir. I want to see how his life continues. I would be terribly interested in that. I want to know more about Éowyn. Yeah.
Well, and that's another thing about the crafting of Lord of the Rings. Well, for starters, I want to add a little side note of casting that I forgot to add earlier.
Yes.
Uma Thurman was originally considered for Éowyn, which would have been weird.
Yeah, a little bit.
Same with Guy Hawke was considered for Faramir.
I can see Guy Hawke a little bit more than... But it wouldn't have been... There is almost a family connection there.
Yeah.
Where, like, you could make the argument that you can see the family resemblance.
Yeah, just a bit.
Like there's enough where if they lied directly to my face and they're like, yeah, we managed to get actual uncle and cousins here to film this, I'd be like, yeah, all right.
Yeah.
The square jaw and, like, the beard, okay.
Yeah, we've had, there's been a couple movies we have at Lads Night where, like, oh, that looks like a discount so-and-so. Look it up. It's that person's brother. It's like, okay, it's...
All right, it is.
Kind of, yeah.
Well, and then there's other movies, there's plenty of other movies where they're like, and this is my brother so-and-so, and you're like, your brother who's adopted?
Well, my brothers and I don't really look alike at all.
Okay, I know you brothers don't think so, but when y'all stand together, it is, especially next to your parents, you can pick out features where you're like, okay, he's got the nose, this guy's got the ears, so-and-so has the eyes. Like, you don't look cohesive when you think of yourselves. Like, I definitely don't think I look like my brother.
I've never seen your brother, so I can't.
Brother's blonde hair and blue eyes.
Yeah.
But he looks like my dad. And then you put a beard on me, and I look like my dad.
Interesting.
Like, it's a weird thing where, like, when you're in it, you have a hard time seeing it.
Okay.
But it helps so much to have characters who do have similar enough features that you can make that argument for you to believe more fully, like, okay, I see the lineage. I am now more invested in this, like, idea of a family, remaining.
It's how, like, with the elves, they chose specific tall and pointy-looking people.
And if there had been one elf who didn't look like that, you would have been like, whoa, hold on, who's this?
Yeah.
What's this person doing here?
It's our half-elf brother.
Yeah, we let him live in the closet.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, No, it'd be weird.
Yeah, and
especially for a movie that relies so heavily on brief appearances and brief lines.
Yeah, and I think the biggest point of Two Towers and why it stands out is specifically the character building.
Yes.
Where...
Yes. This really helps solidify everyone.
Yeah, if we had followed Tolkien's workings, we wouldn't really have that bro-tastic camaraderie between, like...
Most of them.
Between any of the trio.
No, and people who watched these movies and then read the books later, that was one of a lot of my friends' biggest disappointments, was finding out that in Tolkien's work, he doesn't really develop these relationships like that. He's much more interested in the world building. Yeah. And which is good. Like in the book, it's good. But like if you're going and looking for more information on the character development and like the character interactions, you're not going to get it. No. This is where it came from.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I mean, that was my thing too. So I've been listening to these on audiobook.
A good way to do it.
I had read halfway through the Two Towers.
Okay.
And
you got past the boring part. Congrats.
I got to the swamp.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, that's where I left off because
I feel that.
And that's the other thing too is how the books are structured is we get half of Two Towers is for everyone else, and then the second half is Frodo and Samwise.
And it drags on.
Yeah. I mean, they are literally just walking most of the time.
Yes. Yes, they are. And like, from the book standpoint, like, there's a reason it became a classic as quickly as it did. Yeah. But when you are trying to, like, fill in a void from the movie, which is a wonderful pace and back and forth and back and forth, you're not getting that. This is... Yeah. Because it's hard to imagine that this is the second iteration as opposed to, like, a subpar.
Yeah, and the thing, too, with it is that it took me sitting down and rewatching and really thinking about, like, how little Frodo and Samwise are in this movie.
Yeah, they really are barely here.
But with their little interactions, we get such a depth of
they've developed so far. Mm-hmm. And, like, we really get a... like, increase and crescendo in, like, the ring's power and how it corrupts. Yes. And it only took, 5 minutes worth of screen time? Mm-hmm. That's such good acting.
Yeah. No, it's... Two Towers does stand on its own. I will say that. We've bitched about little things here and there of, like, stuff not aging well, but that's gonna happen.
No, there's no way around that.
No. But it's still... There's just something about it that... I don't know if I can really put my thumb on it right now of, like, what makes Two Towers, because Two Towers is still special. And maybe it's just the iconography of the Two Towers for me.
I also think that most of us at this point have picked a favorite scene from all three movies. Yeah. And that scene defines whether or not which one's your favorite movie. For a lot of people, Hobbiton is their favorite scene, so the first one's their favorite movie, even though, story-wise, it's just a lot of walking and politics. Yeah. And then for other people, you know, the upcoming battles in the third one are their favorite. Yes. And so that makes the third movie their favorite. Even though there's some parts in that one that are a little corny. Little cheesy at times.
There are, but
it's cool. And like for some of us, that's their favorite part. And so I think for a lot of people, their favorite parts of Two Towers doesn't always necessarily for everyone else read as like, oh, you like Two Towers. Yeah. People are like, oh, I like Rohan. Okay, well, you like all of Rohan. Yeah. It doesn't hold itself in the same way as the other two movies, which works. Yeah. It ties those two together.
Yeah, because it really would be weird if they just... Because that is the thing, is most of the other movies completely skip over Helm's Deep or the Breaking of Isengard. Yeah. It's always the Battle for Minas Tirith and the eventual end of the movie.
Yeah. And so, like, yeah, it does have that awkwardness to it, but it's that awkwardness that links arms with the other two movies to really help you, like, almost sprint through the middle. Yeah. Even though you're not. You're like, you have an entire 3-hour movie to get through the middle. Yeah. But, like, it doesn't feel like it. It feels like the middle of a story.
Yeah, and, like, even the parts that somewhat drag, they're over so quickly.
Yeah, like, you really, like, when you're watching it, you don't notice them.
Yeah, and it's like when I rewatch them, it's sitting there and it's like, oh shit, oh, I'm an hour into this movie already.
Yeah,
I'm
you
just
have to
finish it.
Yeah, you have to look down and be like, oh, I have to already put the other DVD in? Dang.
Yeah.
Oh, man, I wasn't paying attention to that.
Yeah. No, I mean, It
is the fastest 3 hours.
It is a long time.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I don't know. I just think that speaks to Peter Jackson and the entire crew of Lord of the Rings creating something something so cohesive and well done.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's the Two Towers.
We've got through it.
So it begins, so it ends.
So it ends. And next time we will talk about my personal favorite, the third one.
The Return of the King.
I like ghosts.
I do too, but actually, yeah.
I like pirates and I like ghosts.
I don't know. I might have to actually give it a thought because I love this series so much that I don't know which one really is my favorite.
It's a hard question, especially if you like all of it together. Like, if you like the whole story, It is a difficult question.
Well, and I know Sugi really loves Return of the King, too.
Yes.
He's watched that one a lot.
I think that one arguably, though, is on TV the most.
Well, that and we'll get into it more in the episode, but of the three, it is the most refined.
Yes.
Like, this is the part where the special effects have been mastered.
And we've gotten everyone down. Yeah,
the scaling of the hobbits doesn't look kind of awkward here and there. It looks so well put together.
Yes. This is the Return of the King truly is the final jewel crown.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a reason this trilogy is a masterpiece.
It really is.
So, but yeah, we will see you guys in another week after this one's released for Return of the King.
Yeah.
So, anywho, this has been The Good, the Bad, and the Weird.
Thanks for listening.
Peace.